Welcome to Leadership Where It Matters Most. The family is the most important institution in the world. The future of the church passes through the family. The church has the greatest mission of any organization ever. Go and make disciples of all nations. The family and the church. This is where leadership matters most. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Leadership Where It Matters Most. Today's guest is Rob Kaczmark, and Rob is the president and CEO of Spirit Juice Studios. He founded Spirit Juice in 2007, really for the purpose of elevating Catholic evangelization through powerful visuals and masterful storytelling and video creation. And since that time, he has guided the company as it's grown. It's become kind of a premier and award-winning company. They actually have had 12 Emmy Awards given to them over the years. They've done work with clients in over 15 countries. They've literally completed thousands of projects ranging from documentaries and music videos to podcasts and commercials, which have generated over 1 billion views. So he's married. His wife's name is Kim. They've got 2 boys. I think they're 6 and 8 at the time that we recorded. And today's conversation was a real blessing because it was a real conversation. Rob shared some of the stories that have led to what Spirit Juice is today. Some of those stories are not all sunshine and rainbows, as they say. It was some difficult moments, some difficult decisions, some really trying times for him as a man and as a leader. We talk about a little bit about his testimony, a little bit about kind of the founding of Spirit Juice and how that all came to be, some of the projects they've done. We've talked about some of his sort of leadership principles that he really tries to live by and growing a team and getting quality work done. He talks quite a bit about Spirit Juice Kids. It's kind of a more recent project, but one that they've really poured a lot into, and they've just crossed the threshold of having 1 million subscribers to that channel on YouTube. Yeah, and even towards the end, we just get a little bit more real and personal with some of the struggles and whatnot, not in an imprudent way or immodest, but he's speaking to some of those things. So, and then he gives a blessing to some of our listeners right at the end of the show. So, yeah, I really look forward to the next time Rob and I talk. This was a very edifying conversation for me. It was real. It was vulnerable. It was a gift to me, and I hope it's a gift to you. So enjoy the episode. Rob Kaczmark, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Brett, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I joked with you before we went on to record that it's just neat to see you because I see you on Instagram and YouTube and all these places, and you look just like yourself. That's good.
Thank you.
Beard and all.
I dressed up. I wore the Instagram costume today, so this is how I look on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. No, thanks for this. Thanks for all you're doing. I mean, you're making serious impact. So a lot of people will be familiar with you that listen to this podcast, but for those who aren't, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your faith journey and kind of how you got to where you are.
I'm a cradle Catholic. I think like a lot of cradle Catholics, people that have had a conversion to the faith have a little bit of I think leverage on cradle Catholics because it's newer, right? Once you've had something your whole life, you just don't appreciate it. Even look at like our kids and stuff that our kids have. Like we always try to give our kids better than what we had, and it's like you don't even appreciate what you have. And so I think that's what we are as cradle Catholics a little bit. Like we have the faith; it's so close to us, but we don't understand the depth of it because it's just so familiar. So, I was like an average cradle Catholic where I was just forced to go to church as a young kid. I got an Italian mom who, I was there no matter what on Sundays. And it wasn't until, I hit like my preteens era, where you start to, like life's, it's not all sunshine and roses. It starts to get like a little real. And I was struggling, just kind of like having a hard time with life, like, pretty common for that age. And it just kind of funny, like how suffering and God intersect. And so, it wasn't anything life shattering, but it was just, it was a moment where I was feeling a little down or a little lost. And I was at CCD, which is like a, Catholic Sunday school, whatever, I think they call it something different now. And there was a nun there. Don't know what she was talking about. Probably talked about her mission or something. And she left a little card for us that had like about her mission. But on the other side, it had a prayer. And this is I think the importance. I just want to like make sure people understand, like, you don't know the seeds of faith. Like, how many prayer cards have you gotten or
Mm.
seen or left somewhere, whatever it is. But this one was the one that was the catalyst for me. And I'm sure God would have probably entered in other forms. But on the backside of it, it said, "My Lord, I will try to remember today that nothing is going to happen that you and I can't handle together." And that was like a light bulb moment for me growing up, because I was, seventh grade. And up until then, it just thought like God was another obligation, something I had to do. I had to mow the lawn. I had to do the dishes. So I always try to get out of doing the dishes. But going to church was that same thing. Going to CCD was that same thing. And I was like, whoa, 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 wait. There's nothing that's going to happen. And again, I wouldn't have been receptive to it if I wasn't going through some stuff, right? And so I always try to reflect on that too, because pain doesn't go away, right? And oftentimes, whenever we're going through this pain, we just want to push it away. We want it to be over. We're just trying to get to the next thing. Okay, let's have this pain be done, so once this pain is done, then I can really enjoy life. That's not how it works, and that's how God enters into our life in that pain. And then the interesting thing is, the one thing that unifies all of humanity, no matter what stage of life you are, no matter what status you have, ethnicity, it doesn't matter. We all struggle. We all suffer. And so if you recognize that pain unites us all, and that's where God often enters into our humanity, it's really powerful. So that was the catalyst for me. And then slowly, I got involved in the youth group. I went on a pilgrimage when I was in high school, which was really life changing, because it was just, you get like immersed in this, like, if you've been on a pilgrimage, it's not a vacation. I thought it was a vacation. That's how they got me to
Yeah,
go.
right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Marketing team. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was one of those things where, as I got more and more into it, I was like, all right. And, I think getting into your faith in high school age can be a struggle. There's a duality, because you're going through adolescence, puberty, with all that stuff. So you have a lot of like thoughts and desires, and then you're also like getting closer to God. And so you kind of feel like your butt's on two toilets,
Mm.
a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit. But I think it's also such an important age to really come into your faith, because if you don't have your faith there, you could really go, in other sides. Not to say you can't come back by any means, but I think it helps keep bringing you back, bringing you grounded to your faith. So that was, really a bit of my faith journey, and it kind of kept expanding from there.
That's awesome. People will be familiar with spirit juice, but tell us about the beginning. Like, did a message fall from the sky? Thou shalt do this. Like, what was that like?
So there was a little bit of that moment, like I think in a lot of things, there's a little bit of that, but it's a lot of grinding and a lot of just like, okay, well, let me try this. Let me try that. So like that little bit of moment was this. I got involved in youth groups, and started DJing a lot in high school and college. And so basically in Chicagoland, I made a little bit of a name for myself. I was, really involved in my faith, and then also DJing, and I would do like retreats so long story short, there was a gentleman who was looking to start a Catholic radio show, and he did a pilot. He had someone else host it, and Relevant Radio was the station at the time that was playing it. They're like, no, it's just not the right fit. And then he heard some youth minister talk about, hey, why don't you talk to Rob? He does a lot. This is kind of like his thing. So he came to an event I was doing, and afterwards he came up to me and he's like, I'm starting a radio show, and I'd like you to be the host of it. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay. I'm like, well, he's like, it's a Catholic radio show. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he kind of lost me there, because it's Catholic music. I was early in my faith, but Catholic music, especially in, the early 2000s, wasn't really in the best. I mean, it's, I wouldn't say it's
come a long way. Let's just say that. It's come a long
yeah.
way.
But, and I was just about to graduate college, just about meeting, like this was in April, and I was graduating about a month, and I was like, and my dad is love my dad, very much a blue collar guy. He's like, you gotta get a real job. So, and this was just going to be a volunteer thing. So anyways, I said yes. I was like, when you get offered to host a radio show. And I did that for about 2.5 years. It was all volunteer. I ended up getting a full-time job I literally got a job. I graduated on Sunday and started my full-time job on Monday. I was interviewing during finals week.
Hmm.
So I checked that box. And then, in the free time, I was working on the show, and I learned how to be a host, how to engineer, and all this stuff. And it was really great. I had a lot of opportunities, got to talk to a lot of different people. And the show was called, the one thing that was a saving grace, I go, well, what's the name of the show? He goes, it's Spirit Juice. I was like, dang, it's a pretty good name. Pretty good name.
Yeah.
So that's what Spirit Juice was for a while. until, and I don't really tell this story much publicly, but I'm happy to share it now. So Spirit Juice Studios, what it is now, with people, where we make videos and stuff, would not exist if this didn't happen. And this was, there's a couple of moments that kind of rocked my faith and rocked a little bit of like, and this is nothing like earth shattering, but it's a little bit of like, oh, geez. So my ambition for this radio show, after doing for a couple of years, was I want to get national, right? Because I was just local. I was on one station, then another one, and another one. But like the dream was be on a national thing during the day. So I kind of kept pitching myself, and there was an event at night that had all the relevant radio people there, CEO, COO, everyone, and so and all the different hosts and all the stuff. So at the time when DVDs and CDs, or actually it was CD-ROMs, right, like before USB sticks. Yeah. So I was ready to pitch, right? I had my promo on there. I had one of our best shows on there, and I had this one dance beat that we did. Do you ever recall Father Karapi?
Oh yeah, sure. John Karapi, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's Father anymore, but he was sort of like the Bishop Barron of the early 2000s. Just like, just incredibly gifted in speaking and all that. And he was like the headliner on Relevant Radio. Like he was like, and I think he was only on Relevant. So what we had done is there was a Chicago DJ. So Chicago's kind of notorious for house music. That's where house music started. This guy was a house DJ, not in his faith at all. Started it, but during the day drove a truck and started listening to Relevant Radio and was listening to Father Karapi and had a huge conversion. Got connected to me, and that he was, kind of a co-host on the show at times. And he came up with this dance beat. He took like a house music, and then Father Karapi, on his website at the time, he had this thing like calling young men to the priesthood. And it was so he just downloaded that, didn't alter what Father Karapi had said, but put it like, creatively put it on this dance beat. And then we played it on the show. So it was Catholic music, right? And it was our most well-received thing. So I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to put this on the CD-ROM, and maybe this could really push things along because it's already got Father Karapi. So I go, I'll leave the person nameless of who I gave it to, but it was someone very high up at the time. The person's not there anymore. I said, hey, I'm Rob. I got this Spirit Juice. Here's the CD-ROM. It's got all of our, best show. It's got the piece that we do with Father Karapi. And as soon as I said Father Karapi, it was almost like I slapped him in his face and said, I hate you. Like his face was like, what did you say? I said, the thing with Father Karapi. And at the time we got permission from the we didn't do it without asking anyone. I'm like, oh yeah, they said it was fine. He goes, you can't play anything from Father Karapi. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm sorry. I didn't know. And then the conversation just ended. And me and the other gentleman who had the idea for the show, he was there, Bertie Sawinski. I kind of looked at each other. We're like, what was that about? So whatever. At night ended, and then the next morning, and so I work full time. Still working full time actually it's at the Sears Tower. So I take the train in the morning, and so I remember getting on the train in the morning, and I get a call from the station manager. Said, hey, listen, we got to pull all of your shows that have that Father Karapi song on there because you could only play what Father Karapi sends you to. Like you can't just take something and just play it. Okay. And so then I talked to Bernie. He's like, hey, I'm going to send them a message. Just like apologize. Say, hey, we have no fault thing. We were just trying to promote, your message. It was free on your site. We didn't think we were doing anything wrong. On the train ride home, I get a call from the same person I had talked to. And they said, we have to take you off the air. Essentially kind of making an example of us because they didn't want to lose. It was like Father Karapi was such an important figure that they didn't want to upset him at all. And I guess us reaching out made it even worse. And Spirit Juice was dead the next day. And it was just, we were off the air. That was it. And I just remember like that feeling of just like, because it's one thing if you do something wrong, you're like, shoot, that was my bad. But this was something where like, we didn't even know we were doing something wrong. And to have it be so, it wasn't just like, take the shows off, don't do that again. Okay. That's, understandable if there's stuff, but to be like, you're kicked off the air permanently it was hard. It was really, really hard. But remember, I said, if that didn't happen, so I would say that was, what was that, in October? So, it was a rough couple of days. I'll say that much. It was a rough couple of days. But then we still kept creating stuff. We kept creating these random things. Like we would podcast the show a little bit, do different stuff. Fast forward until about next Easter. Since we were still doing stuff, someone reached out and said, hey, I like what you're doing. Would you, could I come to our headquarters and, we want to talk a little bit more. I said, yeah, absolutely. Their headquarters happened to be in Ireland, so it was a very fun
Hmm.
trip to
Oh
go
wow.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
And they said, listen, we want to, bring you on. We want to do all this media stuff. And I was like, okay, let me think about it. And I was just reflecting, like, okay, so I've had a lot of, background in like working in the church and stuff. I'm like, they're not the only organization that needs better quality media. There's a lot of people out there. What if Spirit Juice wasn't just a radio thing? Because at that point, it just would have permanently died. I'm like, what if Spirit Juice Studios turned into like a production company? We serve the church creating like great videos. Again, this is pre YouTube, or maybe YouTube
Yeah,
might
right.
have just come out, but I still knew there was a need for that. And for them, they were like, well, sure. I mean, it's as a contractor, that's less liability, and we can just hire if you what we need. So they said yes, and I went and put my 2 weeks in, got found a place to rent, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it 100%. I'm not going to just like half-ass it. And so that was 2007, and we're still here making videos.
Right. So when you say 2007 is the founding year, it's that moment, really. It's not Spirit Juice, the radio show. It's Spirit Juice, the creativity that was birthed out of that.
Yeah, yeah. The radio was like 2004, 2005. It was a little. It took
Yeah.
a little bit to kind of like fine tune the pilot for them to take it off. Yeah, but then 2007, it was August. I want to August 17th, I believe. 2007
Yeah.
was that was like the first day where I like, okay, I'm showing up to this place, this small little office that I'm renting, and I'm doing this.
Yeah. 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 And just to connect the dots, because some people be familiar with, Father Karapi and different elements of that story and everything else. But this was when he was at the peak, when he was big
Peak.
and making impact and all that. And
This
it's
was
like,
peak.
yeah,
Yeah,
don't touch him. Don't steal things off his show or whatever. And okay, gotcha.
yeah.
Just making sure. Okay, so that's 2007, birthed out of this chaos, innocent but chaos. Fast forward 2024, 2025, and you guys have won 12 Emmy Awards. So, what is I'm going to ask this, and I'm not looking for a superficial thing. Like, what's the genius here, Rob? Like, is it just a bunch of creatives? Is it your discernment? Like, how do you go from, okay, I guess we're going to do this, to winning, 12 Emmys and doing amazing things? How does that work? What's the genius behind all this? What's the essence?
Probably the only thing I'll say that's help, or that like a God given gift is, I mean, there are many God given gifts, but like my taste has been really good. And there's a
Mm,
video I'll show interns when they start here, where it's like your taste, when you start making something, your taste isn't as good as what you're creating, and it takes a while. And like anyone, you're making stuff and you're like, this isn't that good. It's just it wants to be good. You're trying to be good, but it's just not that good. And it takes a while for that your skill to catch up. And to add one more layer to this, so I didn't go to school for filmmaking. I didn't go to school for media. I went to school for business because it was just the safest generic degree you can get. I mean, I learned a little bit, but nothing that was super helpful. So when I started, it was literally just like, I remember the first video I had to do, I went to a friend's house. I was like, how do you open a Final Cut? Because before that, I was just using
mm,
iMovie 06 to edit like all the stuff for the show, because we could. I mean, it's just a radio thing. It didn't need anything, that big. So I had to learn how to do the craft while people were paying me. And so it felt like this immense pressure. And I would say the first 5 years, it was just learning how to make videos. And the first videos were not that good. And I would just talk to other people that knew more than I did, try to like understand that, and slowly became better. So I would say the secret, and for me then, was perseverance and sticking through. And I remember talking to my dad at one point too, when I was a couple years in, still wasn't making much money. I mean, I was working 7 days a week. I remember a low too. This was, and I'm just being really vulnerable with you. I just remember a
yeah,
low because I
thank
wasn't
you.
making, like, it was really hard to get by. And I remember going to Walmart to buy groceries, and I went to go pay with my debit card, and it was declined. And I had no other, like, everything else was maxed out. All my credit cards are maxed out for stuff. It's like that walk of shame of like, I'm sorry, I can't buy this. And then like just leaving all your groceries on the Walmart thing, and then like walking to your car, and you're like, okay. And so, it's you go through some lows and you're trying to learn stuff. You're not good at it, and there's this pressure and all this stuff. But if you persevere, There's a thing that I say that in one of our first client, this woman, she would always give these talks, and something that sticks with me, and I tell people a lot. She's like, look at the most pivotal moment in human history when Jesus Christ died on the cross. She goes, who was there with him at the very end? His mother and John the Beloved. His mother was there because that's how moms are, right? They're always going to be with us. But John the Beloved was there for two reasons. First, he showed up that day. So not all the disciples showed up that day. Some of them did, but not all of them showed up. So first off, he showed up. The second thing is other people showed up, but then they slowly left. They got scared and they left. But he stayed. He stayed till the end. And that's how God can use you. You have to show up and you have to stay. And I remember hearing that early on in the spiritual phase of the business. And so I don't know, there's something just connected in that where I just felt like, okay, I need to stay. Like I'm going to stay until it's clear that God wants me to do something else. And there was times that, I was like, well, is this it? Is this it? But it wasn't clear. I knew when when God makes it clear, it's usually pretty clear. And so stay through and slowly you start to get a little bit better at stuff, a little bit better at stuff. And then, in the entertainment industry, we're really great at patting ourselves in the back. So, when you get a couple of awards, you kind of get a little bit more confidence because I think a lot of us, I think the reason why the entertainment industry awards us, awards themselves so often is because we always don't think what we're making is good. And so we need some external validation. So it can be a good thing. And so, winning the first Emmy we had in 2014 was really edifying and being like, okay, not just in the Catholic space, but in like the commercial space, people think we're making something that's halfway decent. Like they wouldn't do it otherwise. And then, there's a couple of phases in business. The first phase was I'm doing everything. I'm doing literally every single thing that's there. Then the next phase is, and you can only grow so big by just doing everything. Next phase is you hiring people and then you're trusting them to do it, but you're checking it. They're doing it, but I'm checking it. And that's a lot to do, but then you have maybe 6, 7 people. After that, you have to hire people to manage those people. And then you're trusting other people. And so I've said, if you want to grow, you have to let go. And so letting go has been a slow, hard process. So to your question, I would say it's perseverance and then letting go. And that's a hard thing because you have to let go of something that you've tried to do so hard. And now you're letting someone else do it and potentially fail. And if they fail in a way that affects the client, I got to be the one that's, it's eggs on my face.
The buck stops with you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing kind of the darker moments, if you will, because particularly in your industry, Rob, I can only imagine because I'm not in that space, but so much of the success could be caught up in the validation of others, congratulations, you did this, you get the Emmy and all that. But if that's what you rely on, that's fleeting, man. That doesn't last. And it's in the quiet moments where you're digging down deep, trusting God, really trusting him to come through because you can't. You just got your card declined. Like those are the moments that get to where you are. But when people who are listening to this hear that, you're on the show and they think of spirit juice, they just think of the glamour, the externals and all that. But so much of the story is underneath the hood. It's perseverance, it's difficulty, it's bucking up and all those things. So yeah, I just really appreciate that you sharing that.
Yeah, no, I thank you. And I'm not the only, like I would imagine anyone in their mid 40s that's been in a career or whatever, that you go through this stuff, and it's easy to look at what you see online on social media and it looks very pretty and easy, like comparison is a thief of joy,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so you can look at other people and think like, well, that looks better. But we're all struggling. We've all had our crap to go through.
Yeah. Sometimes in the show, I'll actually ask guests, and I sometimes will pre-warn them, sometimes not, but just, tell me about a time of a season, if you will, of difficulty that the Lord really got you through. I've been amazed at how many people say, I've never shared this before. And the degree to which they're vulnerable I feel like taking my shoes off. Like it's holy ground. Like this is the places where very few people knew that individual had to go through this, but God got them through. And it was like, yeah, it's just kind of amazing. And I love even how you're talking about, the stages of organizational growth, and, you hire people and they're doing the work, but you're checking, and then you got to hire people to manage them. There's a line by Pastor Craig Groeschel that says you can have control or you can have growth, but you can't have both.
So
and that's
true.
kind of your story, right?
Yeah. Another quote that I tell people here a lot is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Amen.
I look at the work we're doing now, the work we do now. And so like videos come in and out. Like a client will hire us, we'll make a video. And if nothing, hopefully nothing, even if something goes wrong, I usually still don't see it or touch it. I can, and in certain projects I may be involved in just for my own curiosity or because I like the project. But projects come in and out, and I don't touch it because, and I think they're better now than they were when I was touching it. And so
Mm.
part of it is like killing your ego and thinking, my mom always says like how great the art isn't written for you. And so understanding that like, although the buck may stop with me and the pressure is on me and I got to make sure the payroll and all that different stuff, if you trust other people to do stuff, you'll be surprised on where they step up, and especially if you bring the right people on. And that's the hard thing. It's like trying to find the right people to bring in, trusting them. And sometimes you don't bring in the right people, and sometimes things don't go well. But like anyone that's been in business for a while understands that. They're like, yeah, that's part of it. Like you're never gonna hire like it's hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't know. I mean, I think there's some merit to that, but at the same time, like you just don't know. And so like you want to do your prudence with stuff, but like people change and you just got to roll with the punches. You can't be stuck. You can't be so romantic. It's like, well, that didn't work out. Like, okay, how do we fix this? How do we fix
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, exactly. How many are in your team now? Like you're about 20 people, is that right? Something like that?
About 25 employees, so W-2s, and then we have quite a few 1099s, so freelancers, contractors,
Yeah.
and that everything from mostly people that are like DPs, directors, shooters, but we have some editors that are 1099s and a few other roles as well. So yeah, we try to, we've got a core group of employees and then enough contractors to like grow, because that's the world of production where it's like a lot going on and a lot, and then it shrinks back down. So trying to be nimble enough.
I didn't prepare you for this, but I'm curious because, I mean, there's a scripture that we know, unless the Lord builds the house, the workers labor in vain. Like you're trying to have eternal spiritual impact in the work you do. What is it like for you as the leader and your team to cooperate with the Spirit of God to do the work you're doing? Like, how are you guys praying, discerning, cooperating? Like, how does that work in your world? Is there something you can speak to about that?
I probably don't have like a really pretty answer for that.
It's all right. You got a real answer. That's what I'm looking for.
I mean, I don't have the luxury of discerning projects. I mean, certainly like if it's not in line with the Catholic faith, we're not going to do it. Like there's that line. But when it comes
Yeah.
to other projects, there's some organizations that have the financial freedom to take the project that they feel the most attracted to. I think of ourselves as a bit of a restaurant, where someone comes, they want, okay, yes, I want this. And then we give them that and we do it the best we can. I think it's important that we operate as much as we know we're in a service industry. So I've had some disagreements with other Catholic creatives. I made a video years ago about the golden rule in this field where it's like, if someone wants purple pajamas, you got to give them purple pajamas. Even if you think purple pajamas looks ugly on them and it's just not right. And because it's the same as use the restaurant analogy. If someone orders a hamburger and you bring them out a steak and you say, this steak is better. Trust me. It's a
Yeah,
prime
right.
cut, blah, blah, blah. They're like, but that's not what I ordered. I ordered a hamburger. I have a taste for a hamburger. I want a hamburger. Just give me the hamburger. And us as creatives like to think how great that art's for us, and we think we know better. And so, to answer your question, it's like I trust that the people that are coming to us, I don't try to claim I know their audience better than they do. So if they want something, we just try to deliver it in the most effective way we can with our own creativity. And there's plenty of times where we will disagree on what's the best way to do it. And it's usually more internally now because I'm pretty strong about, well, if this is what the client wants, we need to do that, even if we think, it's better a different way. And so I did learn early on in a couple, instances where I was like, no, I think they should do it like this. I didn't do it how I wanted. I did how the client wanted. And then I saw, oh, that actually is better. That's, yep, they do know, they know more than me. They know their audience. And so trusting them in that capacity.
Yeah, which is itself a virtuous thing. It's humility. It's recognizing that. Tell me about something that I think you're excited about. Pretty new. Just crossed a threshold, I think. Spirit Juice Kids. What is
Yeah.
that all about?
Spirit Juice Kids, we have a YouTube channel. We started about 2 years ago, and it just passed 1 million subscribers, which
Yeah.
a huge bucket list. We have a plaque in our house for the 100,000. And the funny thing is, like, I have two sons. They're 6 and 8. And if the 8-year-old, if he brings his friends over and they see like the YouTube plaque, they just think it's like the coolest thing.
Yeah, the
They're
best
like,
thing ever. Yeah.
Emmys,
That's
whatever.
funny.
They don't even know what that even is. But the YouTube plaque is like, that's real street cred.
Yeah.
So that became, that also, we wouldn't be where we're at with that if it wasn't for another failure too. So it started because, once I had kids, I started watching kids videos, wasn't watching kids stuff before that. And after a couple of years, it's like, man, there really isn't first of all, it's hard to find quality kid stuff. Secondly, like there was very little to no Catholic stuff out there. And if it was, you had to sign up for something or it's behind like an app. And I don't know, it just can be kind of cumbersome, especially when you have young kids. You want to just put something on quickly. Often YouTube became like just a go-to. It's free. It's on everything, my phone, my TV, all that stuff. I was like, wouldn't it be cool to make a Catholic kids YouTube channel, and have that be it's like its own thing. At the time I was watching a lot of probably Blue's Clues, Mr. Rogers, a few people I knew, Steve Angersano and Melinda Simon had like a really good synergy. And we thought, well, maybe we make a show, like the two of them kind of host it. And so we did it, and we made it like a TV show. We built a set. It was a whole big thing. It was very expensive and took a long time to make a single episode. It's like, okay, we'll get this out there. We'll do a Kickstarter to make the rest of them. And so I had never done a Kickstarter, crowdsourcing sort of thing, but I called in every favor I possibly could. I just, in Kickstarter, it's a 30-day window. You have a set amount of money to raise, and if you get there, you get it all. If you don't get there, you get nothing. An all or nothing thing. Put everything in there, and we were asking for like 100 and I want to say like 80,000 to do like a full season. We got around 44,000, and that was it. And which means we got zero because we didn't hit it. And so it was a really big public loss, and it was really hard. That was another like the next day was just, you feel a little like, crap, what do you do? And so I was in a bit of that moment when we got kicked off the air. Like, okay, what do we do next? I wouldn't, God didn't make me just do all this for nothing, right? So I looked around, I did more research, I talked to different people, and I was like, okay, I had the wrong mentality with this. You don't make a YouTube channel with like, even 10 episodes of something that, you're going to put out like maybe every 2 months or something. To be successful on YouTube, you're putting out regular content on a regular basis. The only way to do that is to make how you're making the videos way simpler and easier, because otherwise, unless you have an endless supply of money, which I did not. So we recalibrated. It took about a year, but we recalibrated. And I think there's two things. One, I invested in a person. I hired a person. Her only job was to make one video a week for the YouTube channel. And then second, I took away any friction. So being that it's a production company, we have a lot of cameras and lenses and different stuff, but one's going on shoots, it's hard to kind of allocate. I was like, okay, I have a room. This room's for you with a camera, some lenses, lights, all the stuff you need, and you're here. And so there's no friction. I had a dedicated person. And that was when Juicebox, we relaunched it as a YouTube channel back in like November of 22, 23. Yeah. And so we slowly grew. In the first year, it did not grow well. It was like maybe 8,000 subscribers, which is not like terrible, but the amount of time and effort I was putting into it, it didn't, but then it started to take root, and we started to learn how to do things a little bit better, and then do stuff a little bit better. And then this past year in 2024 was really when we saw the growth of it. It's been incredible. It's really been, it's the YouTube is the one platform that I probably feel the most confident in how to grow and do well. And it's an art. Like every platform it's a different language in a different audience, and people are expecting different things. And so the secret sauce in YouTube is you start with the thumbnail and then you make the video. The thumbnail is the entry point to every single video you'll watch. And granted, I know it's a little tongue in cheek. Not necessarily that's how we do it every single time. But the importance of your thumbnails on YouTube has, I think, made a huge, huge difference in the channel. And it feels a little silly because it's like, well, especially because we make videos, we don't really make thumbnails. But that I can't emphasize how important the thumbnail is if you want to be well on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Again, that points to something of your leadership, I'm sure, because you you're humble enough to learn these lessons and then apply them vigorously, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what is that process for you? Like, how did you say this? You start with a thumbnail, like that's a statement, but there's like years of learning there. Like, when does that become something of wisdom that you can, actually act from and act on? How does that work for you? How do you pick these things up? Is it like just epiphany moments, or do you test something and then come to realize, oh yeah, I was right, or you got to test this assumption, or how does that work for you?
That was something I heard. I had heard someone say that in a somewhat similar form to that. So I don't want to take full credit for that, nor is that like
Yeah, yeah,
anything. I mean, I think it's somewhat common knowledge in YouTube land. And then, at first, like most things, if something's kind of a dramatic statement like that, you're like, nah, I don't know. And then you sit with it, and you don't,
uh,
because I think a lot of times if we hear something that we don't like, we instantly push it away. And I'm not great at it, but I've done 360 reviews here for me the past couple of years, and so it's a very eye opening thing. I'll hear
yeah,
different
it
stuff
is.
because they're anonymous, so people just tell me exactly how they're feeling. And someone said before, they said, oftentimes I'll tell you something, Rob, you'll disagree right away, but then like a month later, you'll actually come around and agree and do it. And so it's like, okay, what if I can like shorten that process or not be,
Yeah,
so like if people say something to me, I try to not, if I don't agree with it, it's like, okay. And I think about it. It's like, well, let me just, I can still disagree with it later, but there's got to be some truth there. And so I sat with that for a while, and then I observed my own habits on YouTube.
mm,
And I spent a lot of time on YouTube. I still do. It's probably my favorite platform to go on. And I was like, okay, am I picking stuff based on thumbnails? Like, if this is true, do I follow it? Because if I don't follow it, then I could like dismiss it even easier. Not to say it's still not true, but I do. I would click on stuff, not every single time, but I would more likely to click on that. And then I just started doing more research, looking at other channels and seeing their thumbnails and seeing their videos. I'm like, wow, seeing like the amount of views they have, and it's like, and looking at their thumbnail, like that's a really good thumbnail. So like it started to just make sense. And then I was like, there's something here. And then it became really the ethos for the channel of like, we have to dedicate enough time. And I heard something that gave me a little bit of permission too. And I don't know how accurate this is, but Mr. Beast is one of the biggest YouTubers out there. Apparently, and again, this is from a person that I don't know how well his sources, but he could spend up to $75,000 per thumbnail for his videos. I mean, he
wow,
spends millions of dollars on his videos, so
yeah,
that's not that absurd. He'll be like smashing, Lamborghinis with a train or something. But I was like, okay, if he spends that much money, it's probably fine that I spent a couple $100s on a thumbnail.
yeah, right, yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I think that's okay. I think that's relative to the amount of money that he's spending.
Yeah,
So and yeah, and it also it works too. We see videos that have better thumbnail. I've seen too like videos that I didn't think were that good, but the thumbnail was strong, has more views. And it's not every
wow,
single time. Obviously, you can't have there's a totally bad video, but you got to know that like that really means something to people when they see that thumbnail.
yeah. How do you see video innovating in the future?
I would have had a different answer 6 months ago, but
Yeah,
with AI, it's a really, and I'm not on the tip of AI stuff by any means. It's going so fast, but seeing how much AI has evolved in a sense of like creation, it was 6 months ago. AI videos were just like it was humorous,
yeah.
like
How bad they were.
30 fingers. Yeah, it was just like, and then now, I mean, just
Yeah.
just this morning, I was looking at, because I get ads for different stuff to sign up for and things. It is remarkable. I saw an ad for McDonald's that was purely AI, and some of those you got to be careful because they kind of manipulate them a little bit to get you to sign up. But regardless, I could still tell that it was made by AI. So video creation in the future, I don't know. I think it makes me nervous. I think creating content out of nothing, I think ultimately is going to go to AI or very close to it or be some sort of hybrid of that. However, documenting, I don't know how documenting or documentaries and stuff like that, that's going to be hard for AI to sort of touch because it's just life happening. Unless you got, Tesla robots running around with cameras,
Yeah.
that's going to still require people. It's going to still require cinematography. And I think something that also gives me a little bit of assurance, there's been a huge resurgence of film and sort of the old ways of doing stuff. So just like shooting on film photography, shooting on film in motion. And so I also think that people are going to want a purist form. I think you're going to kind of see stuff split. You have a ton of content that's AI, and it'll kind of almost be its own genre, and it'll take over quite a bit of stuff. I think like stock footage and things like that. You'll see so much more AI. But I think you're going to see also people wanting real people on there. They're going to like, well, yeah, I know that's AI. I know AI can look better, but in the same way, like, like digital is technically better than film for the most part. I mean, in the sense of the resolution and what it can do and the autofocus and stuff. But there's still something about film that just looks and feels real and good. And so I think as creators, as we look to the future, if you can put your fingerprint on what you're creating, you're going to be okay, regardless of wherever the technology and stuff goes. I also think that VR will eventually hit the threshold. I thought it was going to do with the Apple Vision. I think partly, not to go off side on that, I think Apple's cost is too great. But usually once Apple enters a market of something, it takes off.
Yeah.
But that's got a few more years. And I think they're going to kind of, once they can get it to like sunglass style, the batteries are smaller. I think that's gonna completely take over cell phones. I think you'll see, like, now we laugh, we see like there's memes of people. It's like everyone's on their phone, and then they flash back like 50 years, and everyone's just reading the newspaper.
Yeah, right.
I think you're gonna see something where everyone's just has glasses on, or even contacts or something, and all your content's going to be consumed for the most part in that capacity. And people, I mean, phones will be a thing of the past. Like it'll feel like the same way of walking around with a newspaper, walking around like looking at your phone.
Wow.
So it'll eventually go to that, but I don't know how soon. I think that's the challenge. There's some technical stuff to really make it hit that threshold.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, what do you make of the whole podcast phenomenon? I mean, here we are on a podcast, and it's particularly like the long form podcast, because when you talked about, you want the real touch and you want real humans and all that, there's something beautiful about a long form podcast, because it's not just all polished. You get people actually thinking through their own thoughts, as I am right now, even. That's just attractive. Like, in the rise of digital and all this animation and all the rest of it, you still have the hunger for the real. And I'm not trying to pit them against as one's holier than the other or anything like that. But what do you make of it? The podcast phenomenon, particularly long form. Like, is it dying too? Is out right away?
I don't think so. It caught me off guard because podcasts, it's had some ebbs and flows. I mean, when the radio, as I mentioned earlier, like when the radio show stopped, we were podcasting. So that was back in whatever that was, like 2006, 2005, 6.
You're a pioneer.
Yeah. But then it wasn't, that was also the time where like video podcasts were, like it was a whole gamut of stuff, and long form stuff. All of ours were very polished. It took a long time to get a show out because we polished it a lot. And then, whatever it is, it kind of hit a threshold where like these long form unedited started to become popular. And I thought it was kind of silly. I didn't think that was going to take off. It's like, who's going to listen to this? And then slowly, then I started listening to it. And like, okay, I get it. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. I will say that. I think people crave that connection, especially the more and more part of it is age too. Like the older you get, like I think about my core group of friends. I see them maybe once a year, maybe a couple times a year. Sometimes some friends I don't see for years. And so the older you get, especially if you have a family and kids and stuff, you just see people less, especially your friends. And so I'm not saying podcasts kind of become your friends, but to a certain degree, you develop relationships with the shows you listen to on a regular basis. And they kind of become this regular friendship. So in one way, I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon because people are going to crave that connection. And oftentimes, it's a bit one-sided of these podcast relationships but that's just the nature of it. And, I can think of people that I listen to, and I feel like I know them well because you're with them for so long. You're here. If you want a relationship with someone, spend time with them. And so it is a relationship, even though it is one-sided. So people will always crave that. Right now, it is the podcast form. Where that will end, I don't know if it will ever end. I'm sure it'll evolve at some point, like most things do. But I mean, radio's still around. Radio's been around for a long time, and that's still here. So I mean, maybe it's just the new next staple and it doesn't go away, but it might go. I mean, everything has an ebb and flow. So I'm sure at some point it'll dip down while some other new form of media will come out that people will be attracted to.
Yeah. I just got a couple more questions I want to ask, but you've been in this a long time. You've spoken to some of the highs and the lows of being in the industry and starting something on your own and hiring people and all that. What are some of the things you've really learned, about yourself in the midst of this unfolding of something powerful and impactful. Because there's no self-gift before self-awareness. And every project you do, and I know you're not doing a lot of the projects now, you're more managing everything, but there's a certain gifting that comes out. What have you learned about yourself?
I've learned that patience and prudence is probably the most important thing when it comes to just like growth. Quoting my mom again, she says, less said, less to mend. And so being quieter, I would imagine if you like polled people around me and said, like, Rob, quieter or more talkative now? I would hope to say that I'm quieter. And so taking more stuff in, talking less. And I've learned, even if you know the answer, doesn't mean you should open your mouth. The first documentary we did, and this part always strikes out, and I still don't fully understand it, but I'm starting to understand it more and more. So it was on Blessed James of Barione. He was the one who started the Pauline order, about 10 different things. So the Daughters of St. Paul, Society of St. Paul, all this different stuff. And really, he was a pioneer at the time. This was like, I think like, I'm confusing my dates, 50s, 60s, 70s era. So film, he was, if you see him pictured, he's still blessed, but if you see him pictured, he often has a film camera. So he did a lot of films. He was in Italy. So not so much in the States in the sense of like the films he made or was a part of. And when the Second Vatican Council, he was invited to that, and they had the section of media and new media and all, or whatever they would call it. And he was there, and he didn't say a single word. The most qualified person, arguably, in the room to talk about it, he did not say a single word.
Wow.
And again, I still don't fully understand that. But the way I sort of think about it is like, he may have known more, but maybe they were just coming to the same conclusion they needed to, and he didn't need to say something. And so I've often in past, when I was like less secure of like just who I am and my capabilities, I feel like I had to like say something. So I feel like, puff my chest up, like I know this. And it's like, you really don't. And at the end of the day, it's not about you, right? It's not about you. If we're doing this for the Lord and you're trying to bring people together, it's just not about you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Again, that's humility. C.S. Lewis, what did he say of humility? It's not that you think less of yourself, you just think of yourself less. I had a guy on, Chris Bruno, he's an author, wrote a book, Men, Masculine Issues, that kind of thing. And one of the books he wrote was on kind of being a sage, which I think is the journey of every man, every person really, but in a particular way, he was talking about men. And so I just asked him, like, what is a sage? And he said, we think of a sage as somebody who, possesses wisdom. But there's a lot of people that possess wisdom. A sage is the one who waits to be asked.
I love that so much.
Isn't that good? So it's not about your presence. It's like you're so grounded in who you are that you don't need to say anything. You only say it when somebody asks, because that's the real test of, is this going to land somewhere? You're in a conversation. It's like, you can just tell people they're not even ready to hear what maybe you have to offer. Why waste your words? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that definition of sage, it's one who waits to be asked. It's like, wow, that is, so that came to mind as you were telling your story. I'm sure
that's amazing. I'm gonna
that's
keep
a keeper,
that one,
right? I know it's not mine, so you go ahead, use it as you see fit. Is there something that's exciting that's on the horizon that you can kind of hint at right now, or is that you don't want to let anything out just yet?
There is, in this industry, there's a couple, sometimes you have to sign NDAs and things.
Right.
There's a project that hasn't been announced. I thought it'd be announced by now, but it's not. It's a documentary. I'll say this, it's international. It's with a very known person, and it's exciting. We've been working on it now for about 6 months. It should be done and out next year. Should be very public coming up, or at least making the announcement of what it is. But in the meantime, we did a film, Heart of a Servant, which had like a theatrical one-day release for Fathom in the United States. It's actually right as of now, it just became on Amazon Prime. We haven't announced it anywhere, but I believe it's on Amazon Prime as we speak. So that's fun. That's been a really cool thing to kind of see that. And another saint, being able to tell some of these stories of saints or soon to be saints, you learn a lot about, more so than, obviously you can learn a lot from watching it, but when you're interviewing all the people and hearing everything, from all the different people talking, it really gives you a lot of roots. It's almost like I feel like I have a certain, like a degree in saints, in the sense of like hearing all of this different things. So it's pretty cool. So definitely people can check that out as well.
That's awesome. And just point us to where we can find all that you're doing.
If you Google Spirit Juice, you should probably see, a bunch of our stuff comes up. Spirit Juice Studios is sort of like the main hub for our client work. It links off to the kid stuff. If you're on YouTube, Spirit Juice, we have a weekly podcast called Poco Poco. So you can listen to that stuff too. So yeah, hopefully there's enough fun stuff for everyone.
There is. That's awesome. We're going to put all that in the show notes so people can access it. Rob, thanks so much. I think we're going to tie the bow here. And part of the reason why I want to tie the bow, because I actually have so much more to talk about, but that just means maybe in 6 or 12 months, we'll get on
Love to
the podcast again and record again. So thank you. Thank you for all you're doing, because you're doing amazing things. You're doing high quality stuff. It's absolutely amazing. Such a gift for so many people. Thank you for all those times where you could have quit and didn't, because I'm sure that all refined you and made you stronger and better as a man, as a leader. And that then resulted in even better products and all the rest of it. So all those times, and for doing it the right way, just really appreciate it. So I want to say thank you.
Brett, thank you, man. That's, I needed that. I will say, and maybe something we could talk about in 6 months or maybe even a year or two, but life isn't without its struggles right now too. So, even I say comparison is the thief of joy. I say that out loud because I often see that, especially if I go online and I look at different people and different stuff and, wish things were different. And so it's, I think anyone, if I could, my closing remarks for anyone that's going through some stuff right now, and especially just to speak to the guys out there, the men out there, I think we suffer in silence quite a bit and can feel like why and what's it, but keep struggling. It's refining you. It's good as a man to struggle, to have this stress, to have this pressure, because on the other side, just like working out stinks. I hate doing it, but you become stronger. And these spiritual struggles, mental struggles, whatever it is, you're going to get stronger on the other side.
Amen. That's so tempting to further go into that, because I think that's a very powerful message, Rob. I mean, I can't tell you how many guys I have the great privilege of speaking with, and then it is across industry, man. You could be a creative, you can be an executive, you can be a bishop. It doesn't really matter. The hearts of men are afflicted by burdens and struggle, and we often think those things are the obstacles to what we want. But it's really God's curriculum for growing the substantive nature of his presence in our lives that actually can be given as a gift, which is what you're speaking to. It's the diamond life. Diamonds are made in places of suffering, burdens, pressure, darkness, heat, but it's that environment that creates the beauty of the diamond itself. And we can't walk away from it. It is the furnace. It's the crucible, the daily transformation. So anyways, preaching the soapbox here, but thank you for sharing that. Maybe in 6 months we go after that at a deeper level, because that'll be a blessing.
Yeah. Well, I think one of my favorite movies is The Dark Knight, and Alfred says, "Endure, Master Wayne."
Yep.
Kind of in that pivotal thing where he's gonna reveal that he is Batman to the public. And he goes, "Endure, because you can do that." And he kind of goes a little more eloquently than I'm trying to do now. But I think to the men out there that are struggling, that want to give up, that are like, I should just stop this thing, or I should. I try to strive for peace, but sometimes that's too high of a thing, and we just want peace in our life. I would encourage you to. It's okay to not have peace in your life right now. Have peace in your heart.
Yes.
Amidst the chaos, have peace in your heart and endure whatever you're going through.
Amen. Thank you so much. That's a great gift, especially to our men. All people are going through it. Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett.
We'll be back. Listeners, I know that this has been a blessing to you, and we will see you next time.